welcome back to the Excellent Leadership Podcast. Today's guest is a true builder and innovator. JJ Gottsch is the CEO of the Austin Gamblers and the Professional Bull Riders Team Series, where he helps not only launch a franchise from scratch, but also in an entirely new way to experience one of the world's most thrilling sports. Raised working in Nebraska feed yards and at his family's bowling alley, JJ learned what it means to hustle, figure things out, and never wait around for permission. After 2 decades in baseball, leading the Round Rock Express and Corpus Christi Hooks, he made a bold pivot into bull riding, proving that great leaders keep evolving. In today's conversation, we talk about serial entrepreneurship, work ethic, brand building, and the courage and loyalty that can be taught from world's elite bull riders. We also explore how to resign gracefully after 20 years with one organization, the surprising parallels between baseball and bull riding, and the power of staying passionate no matter the challenge. Whether you're captured by adrenaline-fueled competition or just curious how great leaders build something from nothing, you are going to love this episode. Welcome, JJ. So how did being raised in feed yards prepare you for being an adult, an executive in your career? Because it must have had a huge influence.
So I think that part was just the hard work, and that you just got to go and do it. And there's really nothing around. Sometimes there's no cheat code or shortcut. Like something, you just got to go do the work.
And probably no feedback loop. No one's saying, "Hey, great job today."
There's a feedback loop, but it's usually not great.
It's criticism. Yeah.
There's a feedback loop, but it usually wasn't great. And so it was, just, you got to figure it out, and you got to be solution oriented and figure out how to, problem solve, because typically, when I'd be 13, 14, I didn't have a driver's license, but they'd say, go out to that property and go and do this. And so I'm getting in some, truck that's got a 3 on the tree. And so I'm having to teach myself how to drive a manual truck that I'd never driven before, drive out somewhere, and then get out there and then do the job. And if I didn't have the right tools, I'd have to figure, so you'd have to figure stuff out on your own. Because there's not somebody there, there wasn't somebody like training me or mentoring me. There's go do that job. And then when you're done with that job, go do that job. And then when you're done with that job, go do that job.
Yeah, it's long hours, I imagine.
Yeah.
So when I was a kid, I worked at Best Buy. So you're saying a little bit different than perhaps?
A little bit different. So
okay.
Yeah, so the 2 places that I predominantly worked growing up was either at a feed yard or at my parents' bowling alley.
At your parents' what?
Bowling alley.
Bowling? They had a bowling alley?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I think one of your questions will talk about kind of where I got all this, my work ethic and kind of background is from those 2 things. 1, working hard at a feed yard, and then 2, being in a bowling alley and having and watching my parents, who were just serial entrepreneurs, they're just hustlers.
Yeah.
They wore a lot of different hats and did a lot of different things, and it was on them to make it work.
That's really cool. So stay there for a minute then. So if I were to say, what foundational memories do you have that prepared you to be a leader? What would you say?
I think honestly of everything, it was my parents, and they're hustlers, and they were always doing different things. And so, they owned the bowling alley in town. And so you don't just open up a bowling alley and you open the doors and people come in. You've got to set up leagues, and you can't just say, I'm going to put a Tuesday night league and then you guys are going to go and sign up and show up. You got to go out and sell those leagues and get people to sign up. You got to get creative, because we lived in a small town. We only had a couple different industries. There was a Belmont, they did center pivot irrigation, and there's a 3M plant. Both of those had 3rd shifts. So my dad would get creative and he'd set up a 3rd shift league. So early in the morning, these guys and gals would get off work. They'd roll in the bowling alley.
At what, 3 a.m.?
No, at 6 or 7, start drinking Falstaffs and start rolling the heavy ball.
And you're working.
Well, I'd get out of school.
Yeah.
As soon as I'd get out of school, I would go. I lived 2 blocks the school was 2 blocks from the bowling alley. So I'd walk over there. First thing I'd do is the older ladies there, who were super nice, and they just would always take care of me. They'd make me a pizza burger, which is essentially a pork tenderloin with cheese on it and then frozen, and then onion rings and a Sunkist. I'd do that, and then I would have to go and get everything ready for the leagues that night. One, I'd have to clean the bathrooms, clean the game room, make sure all the pool table and everything was set up, and then go oil the lanes. So I'd do that, and then once the league got started, then my mom would take me home, and then I'd, get ready and kind of shut it down for the night. And then she'd come back and have to finish up the leagues. And then she'd come home at night, and then we'd go to school and then do the same thing the next day. And
starting at what age?
From my entire life, from when I was a kid. I remember my parents, I think they bought the bowling alley with my uncle in the late 50s, early 60s. So my brothers grew up there. I grew up there. And then my dad became a commodities trader. My mom started a travel agency. She owned a travel agency. She had a dance studio. They both had their real estate licenses. They both had insurance broker licenses. They would set up trips to Vegas. So like they would go and rent a plane, like a Sun Country, like a 737. They would go and put it together, rent it, connect with the casino in Las Vegas, get all the pricing and everything set up, create these packages, and then they would sell them to everybody in town that was bowling in the bowling leagues. And they'd go out to Vegas a couple times a year.
What hustlers.
So just always hustling.
I
and
love
always
it.
trying to figure stuff out. So like when you ask kind of like, where do I get it from? Like it's there. It's like the work ethic from, my immediate family and my extended family. I think that just the wanting to just the hustling nature always is from my parents. And then just watching them always creating things in terms of like the bowling alley and trips to Vegas and entertaining people and creating entertaining moments for people. I don't know that like I was paying attention and said that that's what I want to do when I grow up, but it obviously had an impact on me because that's, what I've been doing for the last 25, 30 years of my life has been creating things and creating experiences around sports and entertainment for people. And that's, that's kind of where I find my joy.
At what point in your life did you have this realization of like, my parents are ballers, that they did great?
I always saw it, but did I ever really realize it or pay attention to it or have respect for it? Probably not until I became an adult, and then you really, once you have your own problems that you've got to solve, once you have your own finances that you've got to pay for and all those other things, you're like, oh, okay, I get it now. Now I see why they were doing all the things that they were doing to pay for everything that they needed to do for their lives, but then to take care of me and my brothers. So it was probably, in my mid-20s when I had the full realization, like, damn, like they were complete ballers.
So fun. If you and I were to go bowling right now, what would you score?
I would be a little nervous.
Yeah,
so,
because I look like an intimidating bowler.
No, there's a couple parts of this story. There's some layers. So one, my mom was a professional bowler as well. So interestingly enough, my dad is in the Nebraska Baseball Hall of Fame. My mom is in the Nebraska Bowling Hall of Fame.
Really?
I remember as a kid, my mom, she only bowled professionally for a few more years after I was born, but I remember going to a couple tournaments, and I would always see when she was getting up and ready to bowl, because I'd see the camera that had the red light, so I'd run behind and wave, and then we'd go home and I'd say, hey, did you see me on TV today? We all grew up bowling, my brothers and I, and so I think my oldest brother was the youngest to ever go to the state bowling tournament. And then my middle brother, because he was born in November, then my middle brother was born in August. So when he was 4 or 5, he then became the youngest to go to the state tournament. So then same thing, I went, and we were all fairly good as kids. And you think bowling is great and it's your life, but then as you become a teenager, and then you realize that girls don't think that guys that bowl are maybe the coolest dudes in the world, then you're like, oh, maybe I don't want to do this all the time. And so kind of it fell out of favor a little bit. And then other sports, playing basketball and football and baseball, it just, you just didn't have the time for it anymore. So all that to be said, I was a much better bowler, in 6th or 7th grade than I am today. And then fast forward to that, the last time I bowled or picked up a ball, I actually snapped my bicep.
No, really?
Yeah. So I ruptured my bicep tendon.
When you picked up a bowling ball?
So it was at my daughter's birthday.
Oh, goodness.
And so I was just jacking around. It was her and all of her friends. And so I was just jacking around. And I was going to try and just drop it and spin it. And as soon as I dropped my arm, it snapped. You could hear it. I thought I got shot. It felt like I got shot, and it sounded like it. It made this massive pop. So all that to be said, I'm walking back, like holding my arm, like what just happened. My daughter said, and she did, Dad, are you going to ruin my birthday?
How old was she at this time?
She was, I think that was when she turned 10.
That's a fair question.
Yeah, it's a fair question. So I was like, no, babe, I'm not going to ruin it. So I literally
Tears pouring down
I
your
literally
eyes.
drove myself to the hospital. And so while that was embarrassing enough, what's worse than that is having to tell your team not just your coworkers, but your team who are bull riders who have the most dangerous job on the planet.
Who are riding bulls with 2 broken ribs.
That, hey, I got an injury like you, but it wasn't from riding a bull. It was from bowling at my 10-year-old's party.
But we're kind of similar.
But it's the same thing, right, guys?
Bowling and bullying. I mean, who's counting?
Yeah, so all that to be said, I think if you and I went bowling today, I think you'd have a pretty good chance.
I love this.
I'm nervous enough that I would probably just bowl left-handed.
That's good. I'm a pretty bad bowler, so I do warn you in advance. I think
but bowling's like
it.
pickleball, right? Because think about it. Why is it such a popular sport like bowling but pickleball? You can be bad at it, have fun. You can be good at it and have fun. You can do it with your buddies. You can do it with your spouse. You can do it with your kids. It's one of those rare things that you can do it and have fun. It's very social. So, don't sleep on bowling. It's still there.
It is still there. We've got a place near our house that almost every kid's birthday party's thrown at. It's called Main Event.
Yeah.
And it's a big arcade and laser tag, but it always starts with bowling. And I lose to the 9-year-old kids. I'm just telling you, it's not my best sport.
Yeah. You're in the Metroplex. That's kind of the heart of where Don Carter and Don Carter lanes were. One of the legends in the sport.
Of course.
So now you know something you didn't know before today.
Yeah. Should we all name legends of bowling right now? Who do you got, Kari?
Next question.
Tell us about bull riding. What got you excited about PBR and running a bull riding team for those who have not signed up yet to go to their first event? I mean, sell us on bull riding.
You did.
I did. It was one of my favorite sports events of the year. And I had my wife and all 3 of my kids go. I would go to that almost over any sports event. They loved it.
No, truth be told, you really did. I mean, you were a very important figure in the transition of me going from, 20 plus year career in baseball to bull riding. And when I talk about, kind of what was that journey and why was that decision made? And it wasn't just one reason. I remember we talked and there was multiple reasons. There was one, it was just this really unique opportunity. And I think I had just turned 50 at the time. And there's not many times in your life or your career when you can take all the lessons that you've learned in your life, both positive and negative, and be able to put those together in one really cool way to be able to now start something new. And so for me, the opportunity at 50 to be able to start not only a new team, which I'd done a couple different times before with the Ryan Sanders group, with Round Rock Express and the Corpus Christi Hooks. But when we did those baseball teams, they were part of the Texas League that had been a part of baseball since the 1800s. There was not a lot of changing at that point that we were making to the game. The cool part one of the cool parts about being able to start this bull riding team was that the league was launching at the exact same time. So to be able to launch a team and a brand and a franchise, but then also be able to help and launch a new league and a new format in a sport that had been, essentially the same for over 100 years. Bull riding had always been one rider, one bull. Can you stay on 8 seconds? Best man wins, right? And so for us to be able to launch this new concept, this new teams format, that was super exciting. The opportunity to be the first sports tenant in the brand new Moody Center back in 2022, which has now gone on to be Polestar Venue of the Year for 2 of the last 3 years. It's just an amazing piece of Austin now and just a great venue. And for us to be able to call that home, to be able to stay in Austin, I think in the conversations that you have with a lot of executives, as they're facing these decisions on these new career opportunities, in most of these situations, more than likely, they're going to have to move to a new market and they're going to have to uproot their family. And so, when you've got these villages and these tribes that you've raised your kids with, on the same street, and you've gone to the same schools and the same churches, to uproot that, especially at the time, I think my daughter was 8 or 9, to be able to have that opportunity to do all those things that we just talked about, but to be able to stay in Austin, in a city that we'd been in and been a part of since 1998, all those things. And then I think at the end of the day, one of the things that was probably most important was just being able to work for an ownership group that was similar to the one I had worked for, that I had a lot of trust and love for, in an exciting new way. And in talking to you and talking about what Egon and Abby Durbin were putting together, not only with the Austin Gamblers, but with the PBR Team Series and what Endeavor was doing at the time, it was all those things. I don't know that any one of those things would have led me to leave working for a company and a family that I had been with for 20 years and loved and grown up with and matured with and had so many amazing memories. But I think it was all of those things. And then at the end of the day, it was their support. I went and talked to the Ryans and said, hey, this is an opportunity that's come available. I'm not looking to get a bigger title or a pay raise, but this is just something that's come up. And they were like, listen, if you want to stay, we'd love for you to stay, but that sounds awesome. And go do it. And you've got our full support. And they've been true to that. We've, it's funny, our friendship is almost kind of is strengthened in a way because we're not employee friends anymore. We're just friends again. And to be able to see them and to be able to get to see Nolan and talk about bull riding and not talk about baseball, it's just, it's been an amazing experience. And again, kudos and thanks to you because, you're the one that brought that opportunity.
Can you stay there for just a second? What's the best way to resign? So when that moment comes up and you're resigning to an ownership group or a CEO, because you're better friends now than you were, bridges are burned all the time when people resign too. Like, think about your own experience. What did you do well? And people who've resigned to you over the years, what are things that stand out that make you go, hey, they resigned well? And any war stories of people who just resigned terribly?
Well, I think, part of the reason that made it easy was part of the reason that made it hard, and that was just a longstanding friendship. We were friends before we ever had an employee-employer relationship. But that part of it, I remember, I think I got the offer verbally to be the CEO of the Austin Gamblers when I was in an Uber on the way to Nolan Ryan's 75th birthday party. I just felt like Judah walking into that birthday party, and it was, and it was all about Nolan, and it was so great because so many different people from his life were there and that were special to him, and so to be there, it was like surreal because it was such a cool moment to be a part of that, but then also know that at some point in the next week that I was probably going to have this really uncomfortable conversation with he and the boys, and so that was a pit in my stomach. But the reality is that the friendship that we had and the trust and the history that we had, it made it easier because it was just being truthful. At the end of the day, I think that, the truth shall set you free, as they say. And so I remember I called, I don't know if it was the next day or 2 days later, and I called Reed and I said, hey man, I need to have a conversation with you. He's like, cool, I'll be back in a couple days. And, I was like, no, I need to talk to you, like, if it's not today or tomorrow. And he's like, well, I think they were in Colorado or somewhere. And he said, well, I'm flying back tomorrow. And he goes, but then I'm going straight from the airport to Houston. And I was like, well, I'll meet you at the airport. And he's like, oh, okay. And he's like, you know what, I'll meet you at the office. And so we meet a couple days later, and we come in, and he had said, hey man, what's going on? And I was like, well, and I basically walked him through the opportunity. And he had this like sigh of relief on his face. And I'm like, what's up? And he goes, I thought you were going to tell me you had cancer. He goes, the fact that it was so serious and we had to talk right away. And he goes, that's what I was genuinely concerned about. And so we talked, and he couldn't have been more pleasant and nice. And I talked to Reese and just the different relationships we have, and got to talk to Nolan. But I knew probably how they were going to react in a very supportive and positive and loving way. But you never know that until it happens, and you just have this nervousness. But I just think at the end of the day, just being truthful, and I think addressing it head on, being transparent, I think any other way, I think it just makes it more difficult. And then I think any relationship after that is damaged if you don't do it that way.
So educate us on bull riding. Let's pretend we have no idea. You're selling someone on the sport, the competitiveness of it, how it's scored. You've got I think it's owner's son or one of the rider's sons who's a total savant. I had the privilege of getting to sit next to him at an event. Just the intricacies in detail, because I don't think most people who listen to our podcast would realize how structured and well thought out and organized PBR is.
The interesting thing about it, I think if you were going to develop a new sport today for today's generation, which is, we know most kids and young adults are on devices and their attention span is roughly 8 to 10 seconds, right? So why, create this sport that is wildly dangerous. Somebody could die, and each ride lasts 8 seconds. It's bull riding, right? But this sport's been around for over 100 years. And so it's just amazing in kind of really coming from my background in baseball, where we were always trying to figure out different ways to get people excited. You look at baseball is always looking at ways to change the game, make it faster, make it more exciting, how to have more home runs and all these different things. For us, the hardest part is really the education and the awareness and getting someone to a bull riding event. Because once they come to an event, you've been to one, you're kind of hooked, and it's adrenaline fueled, and it's almost addicting. I think in talking to our coach, and so I've had the amazing experience of our head coach is Michael Gaffney. He goes by G-Man, one of the true legends in the sport. He's in the Bull Riding Hall of Fame, in the PBR Ring of Honor. He's one of the 20 founders of the actual sport of PBR. Was a world champion in 1997. And just a really amazing person. And he and I are different in a lot of ways, but it's fun to just sit and watch the sport with him and listen to him, because, for him, he'll talk a lot about, in some ways, it's the most intricate, detailed, hard sport to be able to do and to understand. But in a lot of ways, it's relatively easy. It's get on a bull, stay centered, keep your hand on the rope for 8 seconds, and then after 8 seconds, try your best to when you get launched off of there to not get stepped on. It's an amazing sport that I think for right now where we are is, we took the best part of the rodeo, which is bull riding. If you go to any rodeo across the country, and there's rodeos in Florida and California and Nevada and Texas and Wyoming, you go and there's typically, 7 or 8 disciplines of rodeo in the different events, but the last event is always bull riding. Because it's the most exciting, it's the most dangerous, and that's what we did. And that's what PBR did, 32, 33 years ago. So they took the best part of bull riding and then put it together with a rock concert and a WWE event and a UFC event, and then mashed it all into one. And with great music, pyro, sounds, smoke, fire. It really is. It's one of the most exciting events that you can go to.
JJ, I laugh because we're in Nashville, the bachelorette capital of the world. So mechanical bull riding is on every street, right? So I would argue that many bachelorettes would disagree with your last statement, that it would be incredibly difficult to stay on that bull. My question for you, where is the white space for bull riding? Like, where do you see it going? Where would you like for it to go? Where's the potential that you see it evolving into?
I think what we've seen with the PBR team series is that, because a question you had before is like, you stay on for 8 seconds, you can get a score. Well, now, if you want to get really into the intricacies, it's how is a bull ride scored? There's half comes from the bull, half comes from the rider. So 50 points from the bull, 50 points from the rider. Those points from the bull come from 5 different areas of the actual bull's ride in terms of his kick and his spin and his jump and all these different things, right? But in terms of when we talk about the team series, we've created this team competition where it's still the best bull riders in the world on the best bulls in the world. But we've created this team competition to where now it's 5-on-5 and you have an aggregate score each night and there's wins and losses, much like any other score or any other sport. But I think the white space of where this can grow is that with this team series, it's made it much easier to consume for a casual fan, because you can come to an event, and my team is Austin, and the Gamblers are green. Chad's team is the Fort Worth Rattlers, and they're gold. You go and watch. We have 5 guys, they have 5. We have 3 guys that ride, they have 2. We win 3-2, whatever that score is, and it's just easier to consume. And now I don't need to know that Jose Vitor Leme is from Brazil or what province or how old he is. It's just he rides for my team. And I think it's much easier for fans to consume. So I think, we've hit on that, and now the sport just continues to grow. We started with 8 teams in 2022. We've now expanded to 10 teams last year, and we're already in a sales cycle right now to expand to 2 more teams that we'll probably start with in 2027. We've got our big CBS media rights deal right now.
What are valuations now of bull riding teams?
So right now, the first 8 teams roughly sold for about $3 to $4 million. The 2 teams that sold last year, the 2 additional teams, they were both at 22.5. And now there's teams that there's some valuations that are between 45 and 50 million.
Wow.
So you're going from 3 to 4 million to 45 to 50 million in 3 years.
Should have bought a team.
Should have bought a team.
Yeah.
Should have bought 2.
Wow. Yes.
Should have bought 2, right? But we got this great TV package with CBS. There's an additional media rights deal that's being shopped right now. And so, I think we're just on the kind of front edge of this thing, because growing up, and I've talked to a lot of people about this, I remember growing up and country music was kind of in favor, and then it was out of favor, and it was in favor, and it was out of favor. Then there was Gillies, and then there was Urban Cowboy, and it kind of was always going in and out. But when you really look at this last 4 to 5 years and what Taylor Sheridan has done with Yellowstone, with 1923, 1883, 86, the 4 Sixes Ranch, Beyonce, Post Malone, and now all of these different sponsors and products that are wanting to align. They're Western curious, they're cowboy curious, and where and how do I get this authentic, how can we tell our story in this authentic way? And what is more authentic than partnering with a brand or a team or a rider, someone who puts their hand in a rope that's strapped to a 2,000-pound bull? Being able to bridge that gap, tell those stories, and marry those things. I think that's really for us, because the sport for so long within rodeo and even the early days of PBR, all the endemic brands, right? The Wranglers, the Tractor Supplies, and Cooper Tires, and all of those. And now you've got all these new brands, and you look at the different ones that we have, from Tecovas boots, although a Western brand, not traditional Western brand, now getting into that space, and, Rhino USA and Dell Computers and all these different brands, and bringing the non-endemics into the sport. And the more that people are investing into the sport, into Western sports in general, I think this thing just continues to grow.
It's like the cool kid finally, gets discovered and gets his braces off and, hair's slicked back, and you're like, this was underneath this the whole time.
He or she's been there the whole time.
Yeah, the whole time.
They've been sitting in class with you for the last 4 years, right? And so, I think that that's there. And, I think that we've got a real great opportunity to bring these other brands along with us and go along the ride with us.
So you were talking about casual fan. I'm thinking about my 11-year-old son, and I'm thinking, how is he going to get excited for the first time, with also, as a mom, protecting, safety, or maybe there's a crucial situation that I don't want him to see. What I want him to shield in some ways. How do you safeguard that?
So I think the first part of your question, kids are vitally important in any sport. Yeah. If you can get a kid to become a fan of your sport, and you might know this stat, I think if you get a child to become a fan of a sport or a team or a player before the age of 10, there's a 90% chance that they will stay with that team
they're a loyalist.
Or player forever, right? I'm still a fan of Mike Schmidt and Greg Luzinski, and I can tell you the starting lineup of the entire 1980s Philadelphia Phillies team. And I'll always be a fan of them because I became a fan as a kid, right? But I think
how do you become a Phillies fan in Nebraska?
It's a long story.
It's another podcast.
It's probably could be a completely different podcast, but the condensed version is this. There's no professional sports in Nebraska other than Nebraska football, which definitely isn't professional anymore. I have 2 older brothers. I idolized my oldest brother. He would constantly make fun of my middle brother for switching allegiances. Whatever team won that year, that was his favorite team. If the Lakers won, the Lakers were his team. If the Chiefs won, the Chiefs were his team, whatever it was. So I'm like, oh my God. He said, if you need to like one team and you need to like them forever. So I'm like, all right, I need to figure out who I'm going to like. So this was around 1978, 77, 78. I'm in first grade. This girl I liked, name's Michelle Resnicki. She moves to Philadelphia. So I decide that day I'm going to like every team from Philadelphia for the rest of my life. So to this day, I'm still an Eagles fan, a Phillies fan, a Sixers fan, a Flyers fan.
And when was the last time you talked to Michelle?
Well, interestingly enough, so her brother and my brother are still friends.
Oh, cool.
I think she went on to not only play baseball, but potentially football in high school. And then I think she went on to a career in the FBI or something like that.
Come on, that's cool.
Yeah. But no, I'm still a fan to this day.
That's fun. Isn't that amazing how that works?
Yeah. And so, but to your point, I became a fan of all those teams and all the different places that I've gone, and the relationships that I've had working with the Astros and the Rangers and their minor league affiliates and the different places that I've lived. But my loyalty has always been to them. And so going back to your question is, how do we get these kids? It's, getting them and introducing them to our riders and showing them what they do and really exposing them to the sport. Because once they become fans of our riders and or our team or any of the teams, we think that they're going to be fans for life. The other part of the question is shielding them from the danger of the sport. Mm-hmm. And it's real. Typically every night, so at most events, there's 40 rides a night. And depending upon what ends up happening, there may be a couple re-rides if there's a shoot, foul, or some type of penalty. But typically every night, there's going to be some type of an injury. More than likely it's some type of a knee or a shoulder or a wrist, but there's a very good chance that there's going to be a concussion. There's a good chance that a rider could get stepped on. We've had 3 home events in Austin. We're going into our 4th season, and in 2 of the 3 years, we've had somebody, taken to the hospital in serious condition. And so it's a real thing. Mm-hmm. I think it's just being honest and truthful and talking to kids about the dangers of the sport. The good thing is that you don't have to worry about your kids going and doing it, because there's typically, like where there's a baseball field close to your house or a basketball court or even a football field or a soccer field, typically there's not a lot of bull riding arenas down the street from your house, right? And so they're not going to have the access unless, you want them to have the access. So, but that's a real thing.
How do kids get started? So they're living on a ranch usually, or
typically it's access, right? You got to have access. You've got to have somewhere to where there's where there's some type of an arena, some type of chute system to where the bulls can be loaded and be set up to where guys can get on. You got to have bulls, to be able to do bull riding. You got to have the stock. You got to have all the equipment, in terms of the safety equipment that each one of the riders is wearing. So a protective vest, protective helmet, the glove, all those things. But then you have to have safety men, typically. You can have safety women as well, but folks, they're called bullfighters. But essentially, once a rider gets bucked off or is in some kind of trouble, they're going to come in and basically get the attention of the bull away from the rider so that he can get out of the arena. So you got to have all those things.
Who signs up for that job?
Those guys are crazy. And I always thought, getting into this, that I thought our bull riders were the most courageous guys. But when you really look at this, and they are, and it's hard to even say this, that somebody else is more courageous than them, but these bullfighters are truly amazing, because not only are they the courage that it takes, because our bull riders, they get on 1 bull a night. These bullfighters are there for every single ride, the 40 plus rides a night, and they have to be on. And so not only is there the courage that it takes for these guys to do this, but the athleticism, because you've got, these bulls are not only do they weigh 1,500 to 2,000 pounds, they're just unbelievable animal athletes, and how fast they are and how quick they are and how dangerous and smart they are. So there's the athletic ability that these guys have on top of the courage, but then just how smart they are and how great they are at their craft, because it truly is a craft. If you ever watch on TV or you go to a live bull riding event, take the time to watch these guys, because what ends up happening is there's 3 of them. And as the bull comes out and starts turning during the ride, you'll watch them and they'll move in this triangle around the bull. And as soon as the rider is getting bucked off or gets in trouble, you'll see one of the bullfighters literally run up to the front of the bull, because bulls have bad vision. So they're trying to get in front of them to be able, and sometimes you'll see them wave their hand in front of their face. Sometimes you'll see them tap them on the head just to get their attention. And as that bull is going towards that bullfighter, the other bullfighter that's on the side where the guy's getting bucked off, they're grabbing him and pulling him out of the way. And then the third one is then now working to see which way the bull is going to go next. And it's just this amazing triangle. And so the craft, how smart they are, how athletic they are, and how courageous they are, and they do it 40 plus times a night, 3 nights a weekend, 52 weeks a year. And when these riders truly get in danger, they put their life on the line, and they literally run in front of the bull and will get run over by a bull so that they do and the rider doesn't. Or when a bull rider gets his hands stuck in the rope and can't get out and he's flying around, they'll jump on top of the bull and help the bull. They're truly amazing. And honestly, it's a craft, but it's crazy to watch these guys.
They get paid how much for that? And then is that their full-time job, or are they working in an office or working on a ranch the rest of the week?
I think a lot of these guys, including the riders, will typically they'll go back and either they have their own ranch that they'll take care of, and they're either, they're taking care of horses or cattle or whatever it might be. And if they don't own or have their own ranch, they're probably working at somebody else's, because it's got to be, something that, works for their schedule, because typically they're flying to an event or a city on a Thursday. There's performances on Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday afternoon, then they fly home. So they're not working, in an office Monday through Thursday, more than likely.
So fascinating.
Could you imagine having that be your job and then going to an office?
No, I would just be amazed. Like my next door neighbor happens to be one of these guys, and I just don't know it. It could be.
Right. I doubt it.
I doubt it.
There's probably a better chance of a professional bowler living next to you than a...
Yeah. My next door neighbor is an 80-plus-year-old woman, so I don't think that is what she does.
Probably not.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier, half the points are scored by the bull. So if I'm a rider, am I choosing my bull for that night?
So yes and no. So in the individual season, so the bull riding calendar, the individual season goes from about mid-November to mid-May, and then the World Finals take place in mid-May for the individual season. And then the team season starts early July and goes to the end of October. In the individual season, there's what's called long rounds, which is where everybody rides one bull, and that's usually on Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday afternoon. They do not get to select their bull. They're selected at random for each one of the riders. Now, at the end...
How much time does the rider have to prepare for and understand that bull's tendencies, tells?
So they'll find out for the Friday night, they'll find out like on Wednesday, so they'll have a couple days.
Okay.
And then for Saturday and Sunday, they'll find out that night.
And are they watching tape to prepare for the bull?
So they do. So these guys have either A, probably been on the bull, or B, have a buddy that has, and C, if not, there's tape on all these bulls, and they know all their tendencies. And so bulls typically either turn to the right or they turn to the left. Some bulls may turn to the right twice and then pivot and then go to the left. Some bulls just buck, some bulls spin. Every bull has a tendency. And I would say 90% of the time, they're going to stay with those tendencies. But every once in a while, and as soon as you think that's what they're going to do, they're going to do something different because they're really, really smart. In that part, the guys don't get to select their bulls. Now, at the end of a 3-day event, they go into what's called a championship round or a short round. And that's where, in order of they are in the standings for that weekend, the number one rider of that weekend gets to pick first, and then number 2, 3. So in that sense, they do get to select. There is some selection for them. And then in the team season, we have these 5-on-5 competitions. Each team is given their set of bulls, their 5 bulls that they're going to be riding that next day. And we get to select which riders we want to go on which bulls. And again, based on our riders either being right-handed, left-handed, the type of bulls they ride better or not, we typically will go through and place them on those bulls.
So fascinating. You came from baseball.
Mm-hmm.
In baseball, you're doing batting practice before a game. You're swinging with a donut on your bat before it's your time to hit. What's the equivalent of that in bull riding? What's the warm-up before you're getting right out there?
So everybody does it a little bit differently. I think all the riders, they kind of have their own little routine. A lot of this thing is mental. When it gets down to the actual act of riding the bull, it really comes down to focus, and these guys' ability to focus on the job. I tell people, like, riding a bull and getting on top of a bull and the focus that it takes, because a lot of people just see the actual bull ride when the chute opens and the chaos that happens then. What you don't see, unless you're really paying attention, you're on TV or is you're getting put in a steel cage. It's basically 8 feet long, 4 feet wide with a 1,500 to 2,000 pound animal that does not want you on its back. And so before the chute ever opens, it's not making it a great experience for you inside the chute. So you're sitting there with your hand tied to this rope, getting the crap knocked out of you, and then still having to focus on, once this gate opens, staying on for 8 seconds. And then, oh, by the way, when that's over, then I've got to eject myself before he ejects me, and then make sure that I run out of the arena. So there's this massive amount of focus. And so I tell people, it's like the ability to focus over a 10-foot putt on the 18th green at the Masters, knowing that the baddest linebacker in the league, Micah Parsons or whoever, is on the other end of the green and he's running at you while you're getting ready and thinking about putting. And then you have to try to make that putt And regardless if you make the putt or not, he's still going to tackle you running full speed. That's like what riding a bull is, knowing that you're going to get crushed regardless of the success you have with that. And so for these guys, it's that focus. But in terms of the physical part of it, I think everybody's a little bit different. So us as a team, what our guys do is they'll get ready, some calisthenics, just really getting the guys loose, getting warm. A lot of the pressure from them comes from the groin and, core muscles and having all those things ready and loose. But so it's just kind of getting them warm and getting them in the right frame of mind more than anything. Like there's not batting practice. You're not going to go ride some practice bowls that night before you get on the real one.
Quick interruption. If you are enjoying the Excellent Leadership Podcast, I have a small favor to ask you. Could you please take a moment to like, subscribe, and leave a 5-star review? It helps us grow the Excellent Leadership Podcast community and ensures we keep bringing you top-tier guests, powerful insights, and impactful episodes. Thanks for your support. Now, back to the show.
JJ, when you're hiring, you were talking about your team. When you hire, are you needing someone to be an expert in all the things that you just described, or do you just need them to be a hard worker? Do you need, what do you prioritize as someone saying, I want that person in my foxhole. I want them on my team?
So there's really two wildly different components of our business.
Yeah.
So you've got the on the dirt side, which is our employees are our riders, our coaches, our training staff, all of the things that go into that, and the skill sets and the history and the requirements of that are wildly different than what we need to hire for our front office, our traditional front office, the folks that are doing the marketing and social media and content, advertising, sponsorship sales. They're two completely different things, right? It really depends on what side of the equation you're asking for, right? For me, getting into a sport that, I'd never been in, being able to have one of the founders of the sport be our coach, be my mentor, and be somebody that, I can walk side by side with and ask the stupid questions and him not look at me crazy and answer them honestly. To that point, yes, when you're an outsider coming into a sport, you have to surround yourself with legitimacy and people that will have respect for the organization or for you because you've got somebody that knows what they're talking about and has been there and has done that. And so for us, and all the coaches in the league are great. There's some former world champions and people that have, everybody that's coaching in the league has been on a bull as a former rider. But for me, to have someone who is not only a former rider, but one of the founders of the sport and has been involved in the business and knows why they founded the sport and has been through a couple of the iterations of the PBR as it was, purchased by different private equity firms to talk through, it's made all the difference in the world.
What's a day in the life of the CEO of the Austin Gamblers? What does the 9 to 5 calendar look like? Where do you spend your time? What do you obsess over?
9 to 5? That's the funniest thing I've ever heard. My day is I typically wake up at 5.
Are you a 5 a.m. starter?
Yeah, not by choice. I just, I don't know how many couple years ago, I think when you got me this job, this job, thanks a lot, Chad. I used to be an 8 or 9 hour sleeper. Now I'm not. No. So I typically get up at 5 and I'll start hammering out emails for about an hour and a half and then try to get ahead of the day a little bit. Daughter and wife wake up around 6:30. We get everybody ready for school in the day. I drop my daughter off at school, try to go get a quick workout in. And then by the time I get to the office, everybody's hopefully caught up to my hour and a half emails that I've been sending them since 5 a.m. And then I'm working on really every aspect of the business, from the on the dirt stuff, checking in with riders, checking in with our coach, checking in with our training staff, seeing how the guys are doing on a daily basis. Are they healthy? And then it's bouncing around our office. We're an in-office work environment. We're a small staff.
How many now?
So I think we're at 8 full-time. Kind of reminds me, and I think my experience in growing up in the minor league side has really been a great help for me and an advantage for me because, when you talk about NFL or NBA or Major League Baseball, folks, by nature of the size of the organizations, you work in one department and you kind of stay in that department. If you're in sponsorships, you're in sponsorships. If you're in advertising, advertising. If you're in merchandise, you're in merchandise. We're so small. And much like my days in minor league baseball, is we all interact together. You may be doing merchandise, in the morning, you may be doing social media content in the afternoon, but everybody's kind of working together and wearing different hats. And so for me, throughout the day, my big role is supporting. I spent 25 years working for the Ryan family. And in addition to minor league baseball, the Ryans have several different businesses, from banking, beef, all these different businesses. And Nolan's philosophy is always hire the best people and then support them however they need to be supported, and just kind of stay out of their way. And the Durbin family is no different. They want the gamblers to be best in class, not just on the dirt, but off the dirt. And so we've tried really hard to go out and get really best in class people, hard workers. And then my job is just to go around and support them all day. What do they need to do their job better? Full open door policy in my office. It's always open, but as many times a day as employees are walking into my office is as much as I'm going into their office, just sitting down, checking in, how are things going, what's going on, what do I need to know about, what's concerning you right now, where can I help, where do you need me to stay out of the way? So I'm doing a little bit of everything. This year, probably more so than the first 3 years, switched a little bit. The first 3 years doing a lot of brand building, a lot of education, and a lot of awareness. Not only who are the Austin Gamblers, we're not an actual professional gambling team, we're a professional bull riding team in the PBR. And then the next question is, what's the PBR? So talking about the PBR and how we're different from professional rodeo and then PBR teams. And so a lot of education, a lot of awareness, a lot of brand building. And not to say that we're slowing down on that. We still, there's still a lot of folks that don't know about us. But I've spent a lot more time this year in 2025 really on the sponsorship and partnership side, making sure that the partners that we already have on our roster feel good about the relationship and the partnership with us and know that they're getting a good value, checking in with them. Do we need to make any changes to their partnership agreements? Do we need to make any updates? And then spending a lot of time trying to bring new partners in. We talked about this new wave of non-endemic brands that are Western curious and cowboy curious, and being able to reach out to them and be that bridge to, sometimes pull them in, sometimes get behind them and push them in. Probably more so this year, spending more time on the partnerships and sponsorship side than I had in the first 3 years.
What's the most surprising thing about your job that you didn't predict, or maybe Chad didn't prepare you for? We'll blame it on Chad again.
It's a lot more hours than I ever imagined it being. I would say it's more challenging than I thought it would be. But probably the most surprising thing is how rewarding it is. I didn't know that I could love a job more than I loved my previous one. But this job is just, and being able to work with our fellow employees, being able to work for our ownership group, and being able to represent these riders, it's just unbelievable fulfilling because they're good people. They're cowboys by their nature are just humble. They're loyal, they're trustworthy, and all the qualities that you would want to have in somebody. And so to be able to represent them, and it's an interesting job because you've got someone that works for you that's putting on your uniform that says, the Austin Gamblers or the Nashville Stampede or whatever our team is. And unlike any other sport or any other job, your employees are putting on a uniform and they can die. The reality of that and what the sacrifices that they are making, it makes when you're, having a tough day at the office or, don't want to get there or whatever's happening, it makes all of that go away. It's a heavy thing, but I'm grateful for it as well, just because it has made it that much more rewarding when things go well.
JJ, business schools often give students case studies to read about major moments that were a turning point in a company, usually for the good. Sometimes the case study is a negative one. What would be the business school case study on your career? What was a moment that you look back on and you just go, hey, this was a turning point for me that helped me just significantly grow in my career trajectory?
Probably when I had the opportunity. So I was, I started with the Round Rock Express and with Reed, and we wore all the different hats. When we got to Round Rock, we had to get an election passed. So we moved there without a job for sure. So had to get an election pass, got that.
So you bought the team.
So the team, so we purchased the Jackson Generals, the AA team, the Houston Astros. we hadn't get an election passed. So we're literally walking the streets of Round Rock. Fortunate, we won by a landslide and built the stadium in 99 and then opened up in 2000. Wore a lot of different hats, from PR to marketing to communication and all the different things that involved in, like I said, in minor league baseball, you have to wear all these different hats. It was really more of a supporting level cast member in that first iteration. When I went to Corpus Christi and got the opportunity to lead that team, to be the GM and the president of that team, and it, again, still with the support and all the guidance from the Ryan family and the rest of our group, but to be able to go and lead that team, it's different when you're the person that sits in that last chair, and to get involved into a community and be the person. Because in Round Rock we had a GM and an assistant GM, and we had the Ryan family, and they lived in Round Rock. But going to Corpus, they weren't there. They would come and visit and everything else, but like I was the guy to be on the Chamber of Commerce and the tourism committees and all the different charity initiatives and all those things. And so for me, that was the turning point in my career for obvious reasons. But, a lot of positive things happened. And then I did a lot of things that weren't great. That's what I hoped over the last 10 years and being able to work with the Gamblers are remember all the things that I didn't do well. And in some ways, I wish that I was older when I'd gone to Corpus and could have started over, but I wouldn't have learned all those lessons, right? And so I think for me, it was that opportunity, not just from the obvious sense that, you got an opportunity to be elevated and be a team president, but to learn those mistakes on your own, that you can't learn when somebody else is there covering up for you. And so that was, for me, probably the biggest turning point.
What are some personal or professional habits that help you remain high performing in a job that needs you at your best?
Passion. Just love what I do. For the last, 26 years, I've never looked at any of my jobs as a job. I've never even looked at them as a career. It's my life. It's kind of who I am. And some people are like, I don't want my time in baseball or my time in bull riding to define me. I'm so much more than that. And I don't look at it as a bad thing. People talk about work and life balance, and, our good friend Scott O'Neill had written a great book, and there's so many different philosophies. But for me, my work-life balance is that my work is my life. And I just don't look at that as a negative. And it's been great because when I met my wife, we'd already started with the Express, and she came on and she worked a little bit for the Round Rock Express. When we went to Corpus, she was our first merchandise director. And so while she's never full-time worked for any of the companies where I've been, she's always been a part of it. And so she understands it. It's always like I didn't meet my wife and then get into sports. Like she met me and I was in sports. And now today, I've got an 11-year-old daughter. She's borderline savant on this bull riding stuff. She's got massive opinions for me and our coach G-Man on who we go out and select to be on our team, who G-Man selects to ride each night, which bulls we put them on. She's got massive opinions for the judges when she feels like when they don't score our bull rides correctly. She's as big of a fan of this, and it's a part of her life. And so she's gotten to travel with me many weekends to our different events. She's gone to Brazil with me. Both my wife and daughter have gone to Brazil when we did our training camp. So I would say what's helped me, the long answer to your question, is just having a passion for what I do and loving what I do. Because I don't feel like it's work. Sometimes I feel like I'm cheating the system a little bit because I'm getting paid to go and do something that I really love. I think people are always like, I'd love to be a professional golfer because then I can get paid for what I love to do. And while that'd be awesome, I am getting paid for what I love to do.
Yeah. If you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. Not everyone's that fortunate though.
No.
Most people are working jobs that they can't wait to punch the clock and be over.
I think this is probably a good time to bring this up. And it's, when we're talking about management and leadership and running companies and all those things. I remember a lesson that my boss and friend Reed Ryan told me. So I was in Corpus Christi, and my window had a view of the parking lot. And so one of the things that I would see is when people would come into work and when they would leave. I used to just get so frustrated. And one day he called and he's like, "What's going on, dude?" It was like 4:55. And I'm like, this such and such shows up every day at 9:05 and then leaves at 4:55 and blah, blah, blah. And then that one too. And I'm so sick of these people. And he's like, hey man, he's like, you just got to remember how lucky we are. Like, we love what we do. He goes, but there's a certain amount of people that are out there and they're talented and they're going to do a good job for us, but this isn't their life. This is a paycheck. Their obligation to us is to come in and do their job. And our obligation to them is to pay them every 2 weeks and give them a good place to work. Not to have these expectations that they're going to love what they do the same way we do. Like, it's just not reality. And I remember him telling me that. And while it helped a lot, I would still get frustrated, but I always remember that I am very lucky and one of the few that truly does love what they do.
Well, this has been so fun getting to learn more of your story, getting to learn about incredible sport. On the podcast, we've had women's soccer, women's basketball, Formula One, men's soccer, so many sports, golf, tennis, first bull riding.
I love it.
This has been a treat to get to learn.
Better not be the last either.
No, better not be the last. We're going to transition to 7 questions we ask everybody.
All right.
We call it the 7 question blitz. First one, what sports event have you never been to that is on your bucket list to attend?
Kentucky Derby.
You got the outfits for it too.
I've had the opportunity a couple times and it just never worked out from a timing standpoint because of either how the baseball season will line up or now the bull riding season.
Yeah.
But yeah, one day I will get there at some point.
What 3 people, living or historical, would you like to spend a day on the golf course with?
Elvis Presley, Theodore Roosevelt, and then probably my great grandpa Klaus, who was our family member that came over from Germany in 1883.
Wow.
I'm sorry, 1853. I would love to just talk about that journey and what it would take to pull your family up and get on a boat in Hamburg, Germany, and come over to the port of New York, not knowing anybody, not having any money. And then the journey from New York, ultimately to Nebraska, setting up a homestead that our family still has today. Yeah,
the bravery of our ancestors that sometimes I think we probably take for granted. We probably don't think about it very often. But as people who move people for a living, you move somebody from Austin to Dallas, it seems disruptive, and it is. I'm not trying to diminish it. But how disruptive was it for your great-great-great-great-grandfather to move to a country that spoke an entirely different language, that he had no social media to look at, no travel magazines to compare, just to show up in a totally different world for sake of mostly future generations, because he's at an age where he wasn't going to probably be able to enjoy all of that.
And for no guarantee. Like when you've got folks that are going to a different job, you've already set out their pay, they know where they're going to live, that you're going somewhere and it's a dream. It's an idea. For the folks that were going on the Oregon Trail and going from the East Coast to try to get to California, and just the tenacity and the dedication and the courage of those folks, unbelievable.
Yeah, for sure. What sporting memory holds the greatest place in your heart?
Probably from 1991 until last October, it was the College World Series. So I grew up just outside of Omaha in a little town called Valley, Nebraska, and then went to the College World Series every year. In fact, I'm 53, and I think I've gone to 50 or 51 College World Series.
So you still go?
Still go. But we sat in the same seats every year. My parents had season tickets to the College World Series every year since before I was even born. And I got to watch the legends and got to watch Texas and Arizona State and Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens and Ben McDonald from LSU. All these legends come and watch. And it was just that was the memory of our family. And my freshman year of college, I was at Creighton and we made it to the College World Series. And I remember on the first day they introduced all the teams, and then you get to go out and line up on the chalk. And I remember getting introduced. And just that feeling of looking up and seeing my family and everybody that I grew up with.
What was your walkout song?
It wasn't a walkout song back then, I don't think. It's funny because I don't even really, it was just so crazy and so surreal. And that was probably my favorite memory until last October, because that's when the Austin Gamblers won the PBR Teams World Championship. And it happened to be on my wife and I's wedding anniversary.
Cool.
And so being able to be there and not only see the work that we had put in the last 3 years as a team, seeing the guys, now the ultimate goal for them was winning this gold buckle and this championship, and seeing them, be rewarded for their hard work. But then my wife, who'd been along this journey the whole time, sitting next to me when I was talking to you about should we take this job or not, and the 3 years leading up to that, and just all the emotion, and just, and I'm not afraid of him, but just crying just crying and as we're watching this thing. And so that's probably taken over as my newest, best sports memory.
That's awesome. I love that.
What's something that most people don't know about you?
Other than you're a Netflix celebrity.
Yeah. I will bring down ratings on any show. Like this podcast is going straight in the tank.
We're tanking.
Yeah, a few people have unsubscribed since we've been
going
shooting.
Straight in the tank right now. Probably that I worked for the Frank Zappa family. My 1 year that I did not work in sports in my career, I went out to California and I worked for the Zappa family. Frank had already passed, but his widow, Gail, and the 4 kids, Moon Unit, Dweezil, Amit, and Diva, and basically was the personal assistant for their family for a year.
Come on.
And my roommate was Roseanne Barr's personal assistant. We both had signed NDAs, but we would come home every night and we were like, even if we could tell people what just happened today,
They won't believe us.
Nobody would believe it. Like literally nobody would believe what happened today. And so, yeah, so I
How
spent
did you get that?
So I had my buddy was Roseanne Barr's personal assistant, and Gail Zappa, Frank's widow, was very good friends with Roseanne. She's like, I want somebody like Pat, somebody from Nebraska that doesn't want to get in music, doesn't want to get in movies, isn't going to push me a script, isn't going to try to steal something from us. Just, I want a normal, hardworking, sane human being. And so he's like, well, I got a buddy. I don't know if he'll do it or not. So he called me, and I knew the Ryans at some point were going to start this team in Austin and Round Rock, but we had a year or two before it was going to happen. So I was like, I'll do it. And it was awesome. It was just an amazing experience, and every day was different. Like one day we'd be hosting, that's back when Bill Clinton was president, we'd host him at their house. Like that was one day. And then the next day I'd be taking the dogs to the vet. And then the next day I'd be taking food out to one of the kids on a movie set. And then every day was crazy. It was fun.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Just the experiences you've had in your life.
Right?
So what are some of your professional pet peeves? Are there just one or two things that irk you when they take place at work?
When people don't respect other people's time. We've got not only in the office, but it's a big thing with our bull riders and everything else. We tell folks if you're on time, you're 5 minutes late. We just tell people if you're late, you're basically telling somebody that that you're more important than they are. And I'm not perfect. I don't have 100% record on this either, but and that's probably my biggest one. Because I think it's just a ultimate show of disrespect, especially if somebody doesn't recognize it or say, "Hey, sorry, but probably that's probably my biggest one. Just be on time, be early."
We had a guest on the podcast who once told us a story that when he was promoted to the CEO job, it's Ian Ayer, who worked at Nashville Soccer Club. When he's promoted to the CEO job, when the meeting started, he immediately locked the door. And he had people knocking on the door to try to get in the meeting. He's like, yeah, the meeting started 2 minutes ago. And he's like, and I shut the door back and locked it again. He goes, and afterwards I told him, like, hey, it's really not a big deal. Just don't do it again. We show up on time.
I will not say the writer's name to protect them in this podcast, because I know it's going to be going to millions. But that happened last year. We were actually in Nashville, and we were going to do an offsite dinner, and the shuttle was going to leave at 6. And, typically everybody's there by 5:55. We're rolling by 5:58. It gets to 5:59. It gets to 6. It gets to 6:01. And I can literally see our PR person texting, trying to text the writers. And I'm like, put your phone down.
Yep.
I'm like, let's roll. Told the driver, I'm like, go. I told him, I'm like, do not answer your text. Do not give them the address of where we're going. And our PR person, so they show up. I'm like, how did, and like 2 days later, she's like, sorry, I told them where we were.
Okay, you can't be in your current job and you can't be in sports. What's your dream job?
Can I be playing sports?
No.
Like no sports at all?
You can't be the professional bowler that mom and dad dreamed of you being.
God, you guys ruin all the fun. That's a great question. This is another odd one. Probably owning a landscaping company. Back in the day, I would try to build koi ponds.
Did you really?
Yeah. And just always found like creating different landscapes and things like that.
Would you believe it if I told you you're not the only person who said that on this podcast?
Wow. Who knew?
The CEO of the Tennessee Titans, that would be his job, is being an architect, a designer for landscape. So there you go.
Well, I'm going to Titan's house tonight. Maybe I'll talk to him and we can.
You need to.
form a
That is
super
your bond, you and Burke.
Nashville and Austin, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna do this super landscaping company.
I love this idea.
I love it.
Can I be an angel investor in this company?
Absolutely.
Because I would bet on the two of you.
100%.
Next time I'm in Austin, where do I need to go to eat?
Fonda San Miguel.
Say it again.
Fonda San Miguel. Interior Mexican food, upscale. It's one of the old school Austin throwbacks. There's the great thing about living in Austin today as compared to when I moved there in 98 is, I think there were 750,000 people there then. There's like 2.5 million. Yes, there's more traffic. Yes, but the amount of great restaurants we have, it's unbelievable. And nothing against any of the new ones and all the great chefs. I think we've got either 2 or 3 different Michelin star restaurants. But Fonda San Miguel has been there since the 70s. Same owner. He's sitting at the bar every night. Old school customer service. You feel welcome there. Like where I think some newer restaurants, and I don't know if it's the same in Nashville, but you almost feel like they're doing you a favor by letting you eat there. But you go there and you just feel welcome. And it's a very comfortable place. The food is outstanding. But yeah, when you come, we're going to go to Fonda San Miguel. We're going to get some margaritas, top shelf. And then we're going to try probably 4 or 5 different things.
Deal. Sign me up. Fonda San Miguel. Yeah. JJ, so awesome spending time with you. Thank you for joining the Excellent Leadership Podcast. And I'll see you soon in Austin.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's fun, right? Easy enough?
Easy peasy.
Thanks for doing it.
No, for sure.